Nez, hello, how are you?
Hey, Karim, I'm good, thank you. How are
As you
you?
know, I'm actually very excited that you're a part of this because we actually found out that we had seen each other a long time ago. I think more or less when you actually won the YDA 2010. What was it, 10 years ago, more or less?
Yeah,
12,
yeah, we
whatever it
had
was.
dinner, didn't we? We had like a dinner at, is it
We had
Baoli in Cannes?
we had a dinner at Baoli in Cannes, which was fine. And we were
Yeah.
sitting close to each other, and we actually, I actually remember saying how cool your film was, and
Oh,
how
thanks.
excited I was that you actually had won, and I was excited to be actually close to you. So after that, we never saw each other again until now, and it's pretty exciting to actually talk to you about this because, as you know, I've been doing these chats for a number of weeks now with some of the previous winners of the YDA, and more than just talking about the YDA, I wanted to see how directors got there and what their backgrounds were, and how they got to become directors, and obviously importantly how there was probably a before and after the YDA in their career, right?
Right.
So now here we are. You are one of the top directors, and I kind of respect you for that. And you made that face. You made that face of like, oh, don't tell me that.
I'm not sure about that, but yeah, okay, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
But so that said, let's go back in time. What is your background as a family? I mean, did you grow up in a creative family
Um,
to then become a creative?
Not directly to do with filmmaking. I think I grew up in a colourful family. You know, my family was colourful
Yes.
because they originate from Morocco, my parents, and they sort of immigrated over to England in the 60s.
Yep.
But they, both working parents.
Yep.
Essentially, they sort of indirectly had an effect on my creativity just through the fact that I was raised by, I was babysitted by the television,
Right.
and like
Right.
I think I mentioned to you about before was, before, like as a toddler, before I could tell time off a
Yeah.
clock, I could
Yeah.
tell time off what TV show was on
That's
the
fantastic.
yeah.
So whatever show it was. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And there's, and my mum worked. She was a sort of hotel manager at the time, small
Yep.
hotel in Notting Hill,
Yep.
and she would, in the summer holidays, she'd stick me in the Coronet Cinema, which
Yep.
was next door, and the kids and the teenagers that worked there at the time, she'd give them free food at lunch, and I'd just sit there and watch movies all day and watch the same movie over and over.
Over and over and over again.
I remember, I think the one I watched most was Addams Family, if I remember correctly. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
I think I stayed the whole day just watching it over and over and over until she came to pick me
For
up.
a kid, it's fun for a kid, right? It's like it's just
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, free sweets, free popcorn. It was a treat.
exactly.
No, it was great. So yeah, they essentially they had a real sort of indirect kind of influence on it, I suppose. And then also they're just my family. They just the sort of Moroccan culture is quite a colourful, loud.
Very much, yeah.
Yeah, so there's strands of that, definitely.
Yeah, but so basically, moving images were your babysitter as you were growing up,
For
right?
sure. Yeah.
And that kind of gave you a whole bunch of images in your head, and that was your cultural background, right?
Right.
In addition to the very colorful background that you talk about in your family, because it probably you came with that, right? You can't really not
It's a part of it, for sure. Yeah.
Like the Moroccan culture is all about
100%. I had to tone it down, to be honest, just to sort of incorporate myself with sort of Western filmmaking.
Yeah.
But yeah, essentially it is. I mean, if even just going back to Morocco in some summers,
yeah,
just the way they did everything, the way they did weddings, the way they make a wedding cake, like everything's just like loud and.
And then at a certain point, you kind of get the inkling. When did you get the inkling of becoming a director? When did you figure out that those images that you actually saw on the screen were things that you might have been able to do? Was there a moment in time where you're like, hey?
Yeah, I mean, essentially before, I didn't know there was life beyond what I was looking at. So I remember at my youngest, like when I was like 5 to say 10 or 11 even, I wanted to act because that's all I could see, right? So I didn't know there was this sort of life that existed beyond the camera.
Yep.
And I think it was MTV behind the music video making ofs.
Oh, the making of the video.
Making of that, it was like a huge thing, and I remember watching it on MTV, and suddenly, like, I remember seeing this whole life that existed beyond the camera. There was these half-an-hour shows, actually.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And so I think that was the first time I actually was like, sort of interested in life beyond it. And so, yeah, from that point, I think I started.
It's very interesting when you understand that there's
Sorry.
It's very interesting when you understand that there's a layer behind that, right? It's that behind what you actually see on the screen, there's a whole set of thought processes and camera moves and decisions that are made by a lot of people, mostly by, the director himself that actually kind of directs the people to do things. It's interesting when you actually understand that. So did you go to school to do that?
No, really, I didn't do anything. I did art in GCSE, but that was the most sort of creative. I went to school that didn't really offer a lot in arts.
Yep.
That art and music were the two subjects you could probably do to sort of express anything. So I did those. And then when I went to college in Notting Hill St. Charles College, I did media studies and film studies for A-levels.
Nice. Yes.
And that was it. And then I was going to go to university,
Yep.
but I thought I'd enjoy life. So I chose not to.
I'll do other things.
Yeah, I enrolled and I was going to do the whole thing, but then I sort of just took a year off and then suddenly just started trying to do and find my own way into the industry at that point.
Because you started working, right?
I started bits and bobs. I was doing like a little bit of sort of enjoying my young adulthood.
You being young and being young.
Yeah, I've been studying. I've been in school since I was 4, so I definitely took a year out where I was just sort of absorbing life, let's say.
Yep.
The nice way of putting it. And then, yeah, slowly, it's funny, right? Because that was the age, funny enough, where creativity is what you are exposed to, right? The level of creativity. So I didn't know about French New Wave. I didn't know anything, right? I only knew my sort of small, like, pop culture. You know what I mean? It was like what I thought creativity was. I could be creative, but what my boundaries were sort of limited. And I think around 19 to 21, I would say it started opening up more for me. And that was just through meeting people and having girlfriends that were DJs, and just like suddenly, just like my whole, there's this whole universe of cool shit. And then I remember in those years were sort of absorbing a lot of that stuff, like the greats, if you like, because I wasn't really exposed to them as a kid. I didn't have anyone to sort of show me.
Which is very interesting to me, because that is, it's like there's an art piece in Milan when you actually land at the train station that you take from the airport to Milan. Right. There's an art piece on the ground by an Italian artist that is basically a plaque. The plaque on the ground, when you actually see it, says every step you've taken in life has taken you here now, right? And when you're standing on it, you're like, oh, like all the choices that I've made and all the steps that I've taken have actually taken me here now, right? It's like you start thinking about all the paths that actually have taken you there. I find it interesting that, it's the path that you take to actually get to the point where you literally actually find your career path, which is your career path. It's interesting because it's about the people you bump into and the choices that you make and the background that you have and the intuitions that you have, throughout
your influences, that's as good as you can be is what you're exposed to and what your influences are. Because
it's your own culture, right? It's like there is a culture, right? But it's also your culture as Nez, who grew up in that family and who heard Arabic probably spoken every once in a while, and and
yeah, you come in on different perspectives, right? So my background was like that. So when I came into, sort of, let's say, great cinema, like really well-crafted cinema, my perspective would be different of someone whose dad was a director, for example, and was exposed to it as a kid. It would be like the way he saw that world would be completely different than where I come into it. So I guess it has a different reaction when you do it that way. It's sort of,
and your hunger,
things.
And your hunger towards it.
Yeah,
right?
Hunger is important.
Yeah. So
you got to love what you do, right?
Absolutely.
Like that's the main thing about directors. Like I don't think anyone can say that has ever seen a job go well that they have not truly enjoyed the process and been excited about an end product. Like, I think anyone, whenever that feeling isn't there, you just know it's going another direction. So that's really important. Yeah.
So because the other thing is that you actually got into directing a little bit through music, right?
Yeah.
Like, so music and directing were part of the two things that we were growing up.
And that stayed with me, actually, funny enough. Like, I get inspired by a lot of music, even when I'm thinking something up now. I make sure I have a playlist, no words. Just rhythm, and I'll make a playlist and sort of set a mood and a world. So I come in from a sort of world aspect, like, and then I sort of hone in on what the idea needs to be.
Girlfriends that were DJs, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, MTV making of the video.
MTV, exactly.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, and I had loads of friends that were in music in those sort of formative years I was talking about, between 19 and 21. And that's how I got my first opportunity to do a video for one of them. So definitely music is a big part of it.
And then how did you then start your career, as in, like, how did you bump into a production company? I mean, how did you...
I was sending CVs out. I was sending CVs out.
Yes.
And I sent one to Pagan Productions. There's a funny story, actually. The woman who was in charge of it at the time.
Yes.
When I did get the job,
yes,
confessed to me that she'd seen my CV and saw a bunch of spelling mistakes in it and was like, no way. Like, if he's got spelling mistakes in his CV, we can't have him.
No way.
Somehow that CV found its way onto the boss's computer.
That's fantastic.
To this day, she thought I'd hacked it or something. She was that convinced. She was like, I'll never send your CV to him. Anyway, I sent a little letter with it telling him how keen I was, and he was like, oh, let's bring this lad in. And I came in and then got the job a week later. And funny enough, that gentleman is now my commercials producer, Adam Saywood.
That's fantastic. That's like, you know, Hollywood party.
Right, exactly.
You find yourself at the party after you've been thrown out.
Yeah, I was like, how am I going to hack your computer, Carol? I remember it. It was funny. But yeah, essentially that's what I did. I sort of sent CVs out, and Pagan were the only ones that offered a sort of a running place. It was a great company, Pagan. It was such a great place to sort of start. We had Vaughan Arnell, who was one of the big directors, and Daniel Wolfe was sort of just starting to direct. He'd sort of transitioned from being a researcher there into director. Yeah. And it was only 5 directors on the roster, but it was a beautiful sort of place to start. Really.
Yeah, and
there wasn't too much pressure. It was. And
you were a runner, right? And then
I was a runner.
Yep.
For a year. I was a terrible runner. I lost receipts all the time. Lost receipts.
Yes.
Yeah, in the pub. I lost the receipt. Oh. But I was a terrible runner. I was good. I think I was a hard worker. And these are descriptions from people that work there. I was really a hard worker. Like, nothing would ever go out wrong on my watch, but it would probably go out 2 days late. You know what I mean? So that's the kind of runner I was. But it was, but it was good. I mean, and then from there, Vaughan Arnell was leaving, and I'd been there a year, and he offered me to come and work with him directly, and he took me with him to Blink Productions.
Yes.
And then I spent a year working with him on big commercials. It was great.
Yep.
Amazing years.
Yep.
Flying everywhere with him. It was brilliant. It was really, I owe him a lot for that.
Yep.
And then I did my music video for MIA, and Blink signed me.
See, and that's, again, you know, music, you know, it was a big part of your life, right? And then it gets to the YDA, which is kind of a music-driven branded content for a fashion brand, right? In times in which branded content was not really like explained really well. Not that anybody can explain it nowadays, you know. But yeah. But that said, so how you got to do a job, and you got to do that job. It was for Halston's, right?
Right, Halston, yeah.
For Halston, and how was that directly with client? Was like a direct with client?
That was direct to Tamara Mellon, yeah, who owned Jimmy Choo. Her, and funny enough, dare I say his name, Harvey Weinstein, was yeah, I know. Ooh. But yeah, essentially he was also a partner with her, and they wanted to rebrand Holston, which was this incredible sort of Studio 54 designer that was just really chic.
Yeah.
I didn't know, it was funny because I had no idea, I didn't know much about fashion world.
Yep.
And that was the first job, funny enough, that sort of opened that door. But yeah, it was the first of its kind. It was, they basically wanted to do something other than a catwalk. And instead of putting on the catwalk show, they instead wanted to make this film, essentially, which, yeah, like you described, it was the first kind of branded content of its time. Yeah. And then, you know, loads of brands followed suit, fashion brands especially followed suit after that. So it was
really the first one, because it wasn't a commercial, it wasn't a music video, it
no,
was a short film. It was kind
no,
of
yeah, exactly,
things, right?
yeah. That's interesting. You're right. I don't think it was. You couldn't sort of compartmentalize it.
I remember watching it and I went, "This is strange, right? It's like it's courage and it's interesting and it's like all the things that I know in a place that I can't really describe, but I actually like it, right? I like all the things were coalesced into that film. And you got to the YDA and it went well, right? And it went really well. Was there for you a before and after the YDA? Do you feel like the YDA was a good mark for you?
Yes, I mean that film itself, and then being rewarded, obviously, by the YDA. But essentially, that film sort of set the course of what was to come after that, right? So I feel like whether it was my choice or not is another story, but essentially people saw something in that they wanted. And so obviously being a young director, this another sort of perfume brand, huge budget came through and I was like, whoa, okay. So I went down this path of fashion and perfume,
yes,
which was great. For a few years, but it's funny, right? Because it's not necessarily what you might choose for yourself, but you nail a job and it works, and essentially that becomes what people come to you for, right? That becomes your, you know, people think that's all you can do, right? And so you just start heading down this path, and along that road, at one point, I stopped and I was like, wait, hold on, is this?
Yeah.
Like I love this, I really did, and I'm not just saying that. I genuinely, I thought it brought out a side of my vision, if you want to call it that. But I think there was loads lacking. Do you know what I mean? And I wanted to merge it with something. I wanted to tell stories. That's why I got into filmmaking. I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to be a little more you know, just a little more truthful with the images. Whereas in the fashion world, it's always that heightened high visual, which I love, by the way. But I guess, it's funny the way that happens.
Don't cut off that part of the business.
No, not at all. Yeah, I don't want to talk myself out of work. No, I don't want to talk myself out of work. I love fashion brands. Like I love them. No, this is a while back now, anyway. But
but it's true. I mean, to talk about it seriously, I think it's interesting because one of the things that happens with some of the directors that I talk to is that if you are conscious of what you want to do, you know, I always ask my directors, where do you want to go, right? What do you want to be in 3 years? Knowing that, you know, you don't always get to, because we niche directors, right? Like agencies, clients, you know, they want to do the things that director has on the reel, right? But how do you get out of that, you know, that constriction? I'm just going to use it in a good way, right? To not forget or hate or put, you know, in the back burner what you came from, but continue doing something else and kind of evolve and do those things if you have to do them, but also do other things that are part of your kind of, in Italian there's a word, it's like indole, it's a part of your inside, you know, like part of your soul as a creative director. Now, what is your soul? You know, what do you think are all the other things in addition to the things that you started from that you have been good at? You know, storytelling is one of the things that you said, you know.
I mean, I think it's funny because I think what that world, that sort of heightened world of fashion and again, I'm generalizing it, but fashion, perfume, it's high visual, right? And I think that what I took from it was that attention to detail with your images, right? It's, you know, it's precise, it's composed, it's graphic, it's all of the above. And so I think and it's a world, right? Like I was saying, it kind of, like we were saying before, you create worlds in these kind of genres, right? You get a model, you get what, but essentially it's the world that they're in that kind of paints the world of a fragrance or their brand, or so I think those elements I took with me, and yeah, it'd be great to sort of merge them into a world of storytelling somewhere where there's sort of truthful characters, was somewhere I've always
because you do think that your career is a build. Do you think that, that you kind of build and grow and
for sure. I think it's a grow and it's a flush, right? You sort of step up, you go down a thing, you go right, you think about it, okay, this is what I've got from this, and let me flush the rest out and take that with me and sort of learn, and then flush, and it's these kind of, it's almost like you're getting rid of things to hone in on a voice, if you want to call it that, but it's as much as learning, I think it's as much as like stopping.
Are you interested in, because I think the other thing that is very interesting to me as a producer, but you as a director nowadays, is that you live in a world that you have so many choices, right? There's so many things that we can do that go in places where people see things, right? Which I find interesting, because I think you can actually be a director that can go from a long format, from a scripted to a non-scripted to a commercial to a branded content. And it's interesting, like, is there something that you're working on that is actually the direction that you want to take?
Yeah, I'm developing a feature film now with Pulse that we've been working on together for a year.
Because you're at Pulse now, because after
I'm at Pulse Films, I joined Pulse Films when I came back from America, and so we had long chats, and commercial wise, it was a transition. I'm doing it with them, and they've helped with that. And then obviously this long form that I've been working with them, I think would hopefully encompass.
I'm knocking on wood.
Huh?
I'm knocking on wood as
for sure. But yeah, essentially that's, but you're right. I think there's so many different kind of mediums, right? And I honestly, I can wholeheartedly say I enjoy every single one of them, right? I don't think I'd ever stop making music videos, no matter where I went in life or how far I got with the career. I don't think I'd ever stop. I don't think I'd stop making commercials, and not just because of the I think commercials, there is something, there's something electric about commercials, especially when you catch a good one. And obviously the burst of working time, fact that you win a pitch, you get the job, you make the job, you fly out, you meet all these people, they're your best friend for 3 weeks, like all of them are your best friends for 3 weeks. You're going to fit and you're out. And it's like, whoa, so it really is it's electric. It's kind of really
very electric. It's a good word.
And obviously, you have your days where it's tough, but I think I love that. And then feature film, obviously, to be able to feature film or TV one day, to be able to take your time.
Yes.
To bring across what you want to say, because with the other two mediums, that's the thing that you struggle with, right? It's like.
And I think it's interesting that you're at Pulse at the end, right? Because I think Pulse is a good match for everything that you said until now, right? 100%. Not to plug them, not that I need to, but it's like, you talk about music and you talk about different formats and you talk about your interests and the ways and the places that you can be in. And it feels like you're talking about them as partners, which is, I think, what has to be between production and directors and talent and producers. And, I think that is actually a good, you talk about it the right way, I think, because there's a match.
Definitely. Honestly, they're mates, they're friends. They really are. And I think that's important for me. Huh?
It's important, right, for you?
For me, it's always been important. It's like I'm quite a extroverted, high energy kind of guy, especially if I'm working. I don't do passive very well. I don't do indirect very well. And so anyone I've ever tried to work with, the successful stuff has always been someone that I can connect with. It doesn't have to be best mates. It doesn't have to come around to my mum's house, but we have to have some sort of common interest with each other and enjoy each other's company. And I think from that, honestly, those are the best collaborations for me. You know,
Because
I think when there's a line drawn between producer, director, I'm over here, you're over there. There's this kind of formalness to it all. Maybe it works for other directors, but for me, it's never done me well.
It can't work because at the same time, sometimes it feels like that in general, the two parts want to be described as being different, but at the same time, they both actually want the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Like I always say that, there's a thing that I always say. It's like we're not really here to create the process. We're here to create a product, right? So we're here to actually work for we sign the final film, right? Because if that thing goes wrong and it's crap, then we're signing something that is crap. And I personally don't want to sign something that is crap. So if I manage to actually do something that is right for you, knowing all the fights that you can have and all the tips and whatever the abrasiveness of a job is, it's still part of the process.
100%. I think obviously, look, we are striving to the same thing, but we're coming at it on two different ladders, if you like, right? And that is naturally going to create friction at times, right? Because you're going to pull one way, they're going to pull another.
Yeah.
But essentially, I think if you're with good collaborators and you're around people that you trust, that's the main thing, like that you trust.
Good word, yes.
Then I think you'll always that push and pull will turn into something great for you. You know what I mean? It will turn into the right thing that it needs to be. So essentially, I welcome that. Yeah,
That's nice.
I think if it's too heavy one side or it's too heavy, like there's directors out there that just eat their producers alive and their jobs have just fucked up because I don't know if I'm meant to have anything I want. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I'm meant to have every single thing that I'm meant to have. Like where's the thought for me? Where's the struggle for me? I think that sometimes when you are limited and constrained by a budget or by a producer saying this, you go back and if you're really keen on the job, it makes you think faster, harder, and you suddenly come up with something that's 20 times better than the idea if you had all the money in the world. Do you know what I mean?
That's exactly true. I mean, I'm actually on a job right now, so we're shooting tomorrow, and we're done with remote shooting. So we're actually I'm actually in Barcelona right now, and we're shooting tomorrow. And I actually had a meeting with the director a few minutes ago, and the director was saying exactly the same thing. He's like, I'm sorry I'm asking you certain things, but I need this and I will give you back that, right? Because so I'm gonna work with the constraint of things that I don't have for certain things, but I need certain things to actually do this right and this right and this right and this right, right?
Right, yeah.
So it is a tug of war, but it's never, to me, a tug of war that is negative. Is actually positive because it brings good work, I think. I think so,
yeah. It makes you think, man. You go back to that hotel room and you're just sort of, the initial news of something, oh fuck, you're frustrated. But the moment you go back, you're like,
absolutely.
It starts and you start thinking. And I think that all of that's great,
So I think now we can actually reveal to everybody that we actually did. You are the only director that I've done 2 chats with.
But one with a mime. I was silent.
We did this. So this is the second chat that we're doing together. Yeah. And I am happy, and hopefully this is going to work because we had a little bit of a technical issue on the first chat. And now we did it again, and we actually ended up more or less chatting in the same way we did before.
It feels natural, right? It doesn't feel like we've got.
It didn't feel like
dialogue.
But first take didn't go very well. The second take actually worked much better.
Yeah, brilliant.
So
even with my boudoir, my brothel.
I was going to joke about that. So I'm going to leave you to your massage.
Oh dear, yeah, I feel you. No, I'm just trying to hide. I'm trying to hide my world.
I'm gonna leave you to your massage now that we've done this for the second time. Yeah. And Nez, I really can't thank you enough. Really, thank you very much for being such a good sport.
Good to chat to you, buddy.
As always, all the love in the world and good luck for everything. And thank you for doing this again twice.
Good luck with your shoot.
And thank you. I actually am excited to be on a shoot after lockdown and all that.
Tell me about it.
And you, good luck with everything. And I'm going to hopefully not see you, you know, with a square around you, but I might actually be able to see you maybe sitting at a table and, you know,
definitely,
okay.
would love that.
Thank
Karim,
you very much
thanks,
again.
buddy. Take care.
All the love in the world.
Yeah, man.